Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to add the model to our MVC that we have created in the last two videos. I tried to make it as simple as possible, and I will show you only one action, which is loading the information from data source. And then I try to create videos later on to show the other actions. So this way I can make this one shorter, so you can get the concept and then you can work on that one to actually polish your skill and learn more later on with the other videos that are coming in. So let's go ahead. What I want to do in this video, I'm going to create a data class, a model class that can represent a car. So I'm trying to create a controller that allows me to manage the car. Be able to view the cars, add, modify, and delete the cars. I'm going to use a text file for this model that I'm creating, but it can simply change to any other resources that you want, like database as well. So let's go on and start. I'm working on the same structure we had from the last two videos. So I'm going to create a controller here. So I'm going to call it car controller, and let me just make this one bigger. So I'm going to create this controller. Of course, like any other controller that I create, I will extend from my main controller, right? So that way I can include the view from the old controller. Let me just show you that controller to just refresh your memory about that. So this is the main controller. I created it. So I have the view and I have the model, but I didn't do anything with the model, right? So what I have to do now is right in here, I will go ahead and start creating the actions I can have. So the very first one I want to have is index, which is viewing the cars that I have in the data source. So I'll go to the view section, view folder. I'll create a folder. I'll call it car. And right in here, I will create a file. Let's call it index.php. So if I go here, h1, this is show car list. Okay. And if you remember from the other video, what we have done is in any other template I had, I added the header and footer. Let me do that same here as well, so we'll keep this one consistent, right? So I'll go ahead and add the header and footer to this. Okay. Now, as I explained, I need to take a few actions. So what I need to do is I need to have the index, which lists the cars. I also need to have the rest of them too as well. Let me just go ahead and save this file as edit.php. So we'll go here and I change this to edit car, right? Then I will go ahead and save this one as delete.php. Simply I change this one to delete. Okay. Let me close these two for now. So I just want to make sure what I'm doing is correct. So I want to test my car controller class to see if it actually comes over here or not. So what I have to do is, the very first thing is I have to load the view. So since a view is part of the main controller, and if you remember, we already have created an object of the view, which requires a file name and a data file. The rest is done for us, so we shouldn't be worried about it. So if I go type this, I can simply go ahead and access the view that requires what was that? Let me check one more time. It requires the file name and if there are any data that I want to send to that file. So for that reason, I'll go here. What I want is car. I will go ahead and use the directory separator in this case, just for the being this able to send it to different OS later on. So Windows or Linux is going to work anyway, but this way, right? So the one I want is called index, right? And I do not have any data to be sent to this for now. So I'm going to do this and simply we'll go ahead and call this view, and I'll call the render function on this, right? So if I go to the browser right now and I go to the car controller, it should simply load the index file for me. So what I'm going to do is I go use the PHP server, internal server. So I cd to the public folder, and I'll simply run PHP. I have the PHP interpreter in my environment path, so I just need to type PHP. If you don't have that, then you simply have to specify the full path to where your PHP interpreter is. So dash uppercase S localhost. I'll go with port 80, so I don't want to put any port number. So that's why I go ahead and put the colon 80. So let me go ahead and hit enter. Let me see if server is running. Yes, it does. Okay. So I'm going to open the browser now. And simply I will go and type localhost. Localhost, okay. So this is the one that we used on the other videos as well. So if I go here and do /car, it simply should show me the call list, right? So I'm 100% sure that my controller works. So now what I have to do is I want to go ahead and prepare for the model. So the very first thing I do is I'll go in the data folder. I will create a text file. So I will go ahead and call it cars.txt, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some car information in there. So I have already prepared that. I just put it here. The first one is the car ID, then I have the make, model, year, and then finally a price. Each record is separated by a new line, right? So I'm going to save this file right now inside the data folder, right? Now what I need is, next I need to create the model. So let's go create the model first. So I'll go here and I create a new class, PHP class, and I will call it car, right? Now, with the car class, there are a few things I need. Well, of course, if I want to load the data into this class, like in my case, all the cars, I have to know where the file is. Also, I need another variable as an array to be able to keep all the cars in that file within this object, so I can loop through them later on and view them one by one, right? So what I'm going to do is I go ahead and I create a static field. I'll call it data file, right? So where the files are, and then I will create another one, and I will call it inventory, right? Which is an empty array at the beginning. So now that I've done this, through the constructor, I can set the few information here. So what I'm going to do is I simply go ahead and create the constructor. And for the constructor, I will go ahead and access the data file equal. And since I have already specified the constant variable data in my config file or index.php, I will just go ahead and access the car. So call it cars.txt. This is the text file. So I'm just including the text file in here. Now what I need to do is I need to be able to load this information into the inventory variable. So what I'm going to do is I will go ahead and create a function. I can call this one maybe private because I don't need to do that prior to any other things. I explain why I make it private in a second. Function load, and simply I'll go ahead and I will say if file exists, and the file name is the exact same thing we had here. Look at this. So I just copy that one. So I'm checking. If this file exists, I will go ahead and simply include the file, right? The way I do include the data of the file to these classes, first I want to store them all inside the inventory, right? So I'm going to use the file function. The good thing about the file function is as soon as you give the file path and the name to this function, which is called file, it will return all the information as an array. So each element of the array will contain one line of that file. So I'm going and do this right now. So now inventory contains the array of those data, right? Now, since this function is private, I gotta create an accessor function, a function that can call this function to get the data. The whole idea for me here is to be able to return the inventory. right, to get the inventory. So what I can do is simply I can create another function called function, public function, I'll call it get cars, right? So what I would do here is simply I'll go and call the private method load, and then since everything is loaded into the inventory, I just simply return this inventory. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, just review the code one more time. And as I said, these are just to get you familiar with the code. There's so many other ways of writing these things, right? So please bear in mind, you always have to experiment to do these things in new and different ways as well. Okay, so now that I've done this, what I have to do next is I'm going to use these methods. Let me do that. I'll go to the car controller, and what I have to do is now I need to load the model because I might have multiple models in this project. So what I have to do is I have to load the model. Where is the best place to load the model? Of course, the controller, because that's where I have the model and the view. So for that reason, I'll go back to the controller and start including the model into the main controller. So go ahead, function, model, right? And let's go ahead and say we might need the same thing for the model as well. So I just put that one in. Definitely I need the model name and the data, right? So go ahead, model name and the data, right? And now that I have this, simply what I have to do is I have to check the model name that is coming in exists or not, right? So simply what I would do is I will go ahead and I will say if file exists, and what is the file? The file is inside the model folder right here, right? So I'll go ahead and use the constant model that I have created in index.php, right? And then simply I will go add the model name, right? And I will add the extension .php. If this file exists, the only thing I have to do is I just have to include it because it's a class, right? So I just have to include, let me see if I can find it here. I just have to include this file. If I have the file in there, I can simply create object of that and try to call its method, right? So let's go back to the car controller here. I have that one. I'm here in the controller. So simply I will go and say, okay, I require this file, right? The same file that I was looking at. Now the beauty part is this. Since I have included the class, I can simply go ahead and do this. I can go ahead and say this model, right? The model variable that I have, or the field that I have, is equal new model name. Look at this, right? So I have created the object, and the object is part of this controller, which I extended in my car controller. So simply in this function, I can refer to that model using this model and pass the model name. I hope it makes sense. Okay, of course, if you remember, I could simply do this as well. I just have to make sure the file exists and then try to create an instance of that object because I already have an autoloader in place, right? So I'll try this later. Let me go back and call this method inside the car controller. So what I need here is in the car controller, I need to start including the model that I need, right? So I'll go ahead and I will say, okay, I need this model car. Okay, there you go. So what I did is I'm including the model right now. I should be able to test this. Let me just go ahead and bring the browser up one more time. So if I refresh this, I should not see much changes here, right? Okay, let me just try one more thing. So if I go here, I should be able to say word dump this, I think, model. Let me see if I can do that. So if I go ahead and refresh the browser now, yeah, here you go. So I see all the information there. Of course, I have to call the method in order to be able to get the cars. If you remember from the model, I have the get car here. Let me see if I can try that as well. just make sure everything works, right? So if I go here and I say get cars, was it get cars or was it get car? Let me just check. Get cars, right? So I save this and I go back to the browser. Let me just try this. Here you go. I'll go all the cars into the inventory, right? So everything works fine. Now, just keep in mind, what I have to do is, in this part, when I add the view, I could pass the parameters to the view as well. Let me go to the definition of this so you can see it. So I can pass the data as well. Now, what is these data? This is an array, and I can simply send this to the constructor of the view class so it can hold those data. Then I can, inside the PHP file that I create, I can access those values as well. So for that reason, if you look at, remember, the view can accept 2 functions. So what I'm going to do is, here, I will pass the array that I just printed as the second parameter of the array. But what I want to do is, since I want to be able to access, let me just go a bit here, because I want to be able to access this array as a whole, because I want to loop through this and print everything. So what I'm going to do is I'll create another array, an associative array, and I'll give a key card to the whole array I'm getting from the get card. Look at this. Let's take a look at one more time. I could send a whole array, but then for me to be able to access this, I should have be able to loop through it, right? So what I did is I'll create an associative array, I'll give a name cars, and then inside the HTML or PHP file, I can go through these cars and print them one by one. Let me go ahead and just make sure everything is okay here. I'm going to refresh my browser, and I just want to make sure nothing is going to show up. Okay, we're good to go, right? Let's go ahead and implement the rest. So what I want to do is now, I want to go ahead and create the index page. Okay, I go inside the car, I go inside the index, and simply what I can do here is, I can have a sub menu here that allows me to access to different view or different action that I can. So I can simply go and say, okay, I want to go to cars, edit, right? Let me just do this, edit car. I can go and say delete car, and I can say view cars. Of course, I need this to be index. I can remove the index if you remember, and here it should be delete, right? Let's see if everything works. Fine. Of course, I don't have all the necessary thing. So if I click here, it goes to the edit. If I go here, it goes to the delete. Just keep in mind, in my controller, I did not, in the car controller, I did not implement the other 2 views that I have created. If I want to show those as well, I just have to go ahead and create the proper function for each of these view and pass the proper information. So now I'm indexed. I simply want to go ahead and print these things. So what I'm going to do is, I just want to make sure there is that the data contains, the view data contains the array that view data contains name cars. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and start my PHP right here, and I will simply check if array key exists, and the array key that I'm looking for is cars. This is what I named this field here. Do you remember that? It could be gobbledygoo. Then you would simply look for gobbledygoo in that file, right here. Where is it? Let me just close this to confuse myself less, right here. So if it was gobbledygoo, I would say gobbledygoo, but since I called it cars, or simply I would go ahead and say look for cars, and where I want to look in this car in this view data. This view data is set when the view object was created, right? So if this exists, what I would do is I want to go ahead through that data and start printing a table that actually contain the value. So what I'm going to do is I simply go ahead and create a variable. I'll call it table. I'll make it empty string, right? And then I will go ahead and I just actually can do this. Let me just put this one here. I will say table border equal 1. The best way is to do it with CSS, the border I'm talking about, but just for simplicity and make these things a bit faster, so I'm not going to go through CSS now. So I'll go ahead and I say this view data, right? This view data as I'll simply go ahead and call it as car, right? So I'm getting all these into a car. What I would do is, now if you remember from the file, each record here are separated. The column in each record are separated with a comma. We call it comma separated value. So what I have to do is I simply have to break that one into an array, so I can simply go ahead and loop, right? So what I would do is this. I will go ahead and create another variable, temporary variable. I'll call it car info, and I will simply go ahead and make this one explode. So equal explode the car, right? So what I do here right now is I just have to say explode env where you find comma, and this is the value I want you to explode. Remember, every single line is contains multiple fields, and they are separated with a comma. So what I'm doing is I read one element of the array. Every element of the array contains a string, which is a car record. Then I explode this string into multiple elements for an array. So I can simply go do something like this. I'll show you in a second. So I can go ahead and say for each car info as item, right? I can simply go ahead and print one by one. Now what happened is I have opened the table in here at the beginning before the for each loop starts. So let's close this as well, just make sure we are in the right track. So I'll go ahead and I say dot equal, and I close the table tag, right? So that way I know the table is okay. Now before I go to print the car info, definitely I have to start the row. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and say, okay, dot equal td tag, so I'm sorry, tr tag, right? So I'm starting the tr right after the second loop right here. I will close the tr. Now what is left? I just have to print the car information. So here I will go ahead and I will say table dot equal td, right? And then I will include the item. Look at this. Now of course there's so many other ways to make this beautiful, but I'm just creating a very, very simple table. So now that this is done, everything is finished, I'll simply go ahead and say echo table, right? Let's see if that works. Okay, are you ready? So I'll go ahead and I simply refresh this. Oh, explode parameter expect 2 to be string, array is given. Let me check my code here. Okay, what do I have here? String. Just give me a second. I have this data. I have these data. Oh, this is an array. I need the key. Do you remember? So I need to look for that key. That view data itself is an array, right? So I have to give another name to access all the cars in that data view data array, right? So let me go back, see if everything is okay now. Here we go. Yes, it is. So I have the table. Simply what I have to do is for the edit and delete, I just have to be able to pass this ID to the next function or next method of the car controller class and take that value and start modifying. Now, inside the car model, I can create all those action I need. Like for instance, if I want to delete, if I want to insert and so on. So each of them can be a method right in this class. So you can simply call them inside your method in the car controller class. I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't want to make it longer than this. I try my best to implement the other method and create or release smaller videos so you can follow up and take a look at it. Try to use the knowledge you got from this video and implement the rest of the method. Thank you very much for watching the video. Bye-bye.